Hey everybody, I'm Mark Weathington, director of the J.C. Ralston Arboretum, and since we're social distancing and I'm not at work, I'm going to give you a tour around my home garden today, show you some things that I'm enjoying right now. It's a small garden, so it won't take us too terribly long to get around it. And I've only been gardening in this spot for a few years, so everything you see has been in the ground for less than 3 years. So one thing I always tell people is I love vines. If you have a tree, that's an opportunity to grow a vine. If you have a shrub, that's an opportunity to grow a vine. One that I'm really enamored with right now is this Clematis. It's called Happy Diana, and it opens up these tight little buds, pointy buds open up to flowers that this is about as wide as it ever opens. Real thick textured petals, so they last a long time on the plant. And this plant's been flowering for months now. The nice thing about Clematis is after they flower, you get really cool seed heads that last a long time afterwards. So you really get 2 good seasons with often coppery or silvery seed heads on there. So neat plant. It's not an overly vigorous Clematis, and it's growing through this evergreen dogwood. This is Empress of China, Ellsbury, which has these white flowers right now. It's basically an evergreen Cusa dogwood, so the flowers will be followed by red fruit that's about 1 inch across. They're kind of a neat little combination that's going on there. And I'll point out this other Clematis. They can be really, the seed heads can be really pretty intricate on there. This is one that all the seeds curl around real tightly in kind of a whirl. So there's a lot in the garden. I do like green plants, so there's a lot that's green in the garden, but this is actually the first garden I've ever had personally where I have a lot of sun, so we do have some things with showier flowers that we'll get to. This is one that I'm really liking right now. This is Tiarella Pink Fizz. It's got great foliage, it's got great flowers. This is one from Hans Hansen at Terra Nova Nurseries, and it's been just a really good plant. And it's paired with an introduction from Plant Delights Nursery. This is Godzilla painted fern. It's a hybrid with the Japanese painted fern and then something else, maybe a lady fern. But it's got great color like Japanese painted ferns, but it gets at least twice as tall as the biggest painted fern you've ever grown. So it's a really nice combination. Pure luck because I just put plants down where I have some room to plant them. So, a few neat little things over here. One of them is this gentian. This is, I'm forgetting the name, which Gentian Vecchiorum, I believe. I do forget names occasionally. And it's very few gentians will really grow well for us. This is not terribly showy, you know, we really want the bright blue ones. But still kind of neat. Let me
put the tag right there.
Nope. There we go. Yeah. Gentian Vecchiorum. Another plant that I love, most other people probably will pass by this, but this plant, this is a Cyanopanics Formosanes from Taiwan. It was one of the top plants on my list every time I've been to collecting in Taiwan, and I've never been able to bring it back. I still haven't. This plant I got from Dan Hinckley, but it has settled in very nicely. So I'm really excited about how well it grows for us. I think it has an opportunity to be kind of a interesting tropical looking shrub. So I like a lot of species plants. I grow a lot of species peonies and lilies and iris. Most of the iris are done now, but this one, Iris tridentata, is just getting going. It's a really nice, vigorous form. Flowers, real pretty. Nothing, different from a lot of other ones, but I like how late it is, and I like how tidy the plant always looks. A lot of times irises are kind of get floppy and don't look so beautiful after they finish flowering, but this one just stays really nice and kind of compact. Right. I typically don't like plants that will hurt you in the garden, but this is one cactus that I really like. This is Opuntia humifusa sunshine. It is a super showy, very, very floriferous form of our native North America prickly pear. I won't let it get too big here. I'll come in with some thick gloves and break off pads because I don't want a great big plant that's kind of growing out of control, but I do love it when it's in flower. Now I mentioned lilies, how much I like lilies. This is one, we haven't quite determined the species yet. Collected it in southern Gansu in 2017. It's got a little bit of purple on the back and then kind of almost a yellow-green throat. It's pretty tall when it's standing up. It's kind of flopping over now, but it's easily 5 or 6 feet tall when it stands up properly. So I think it's a very cool plant. And now that it's flowered, we'll be able to figure out what exactly it is. A lot of the other lilies haven't started flowering yet. There's a neat little guy that we offered to Arboretum members recently. It's a pomegranate. It's called Mini Francis pomegranate. And it is just a tiny little shrub. These little flowers, it'll be followed by little tiny pomegranates. These are all the flower buds kind of at all the tips of the branches. It is the smallest by far of any pomegranate I've ever seen. So I just think it's kind of neat as a novelty. I don't think there's going to be much to eat in those pomegranate fruits. Now I love cycads. I love palms and cycads. This is a complex cross of cycads involving 3 species. It's been hardy here for a couple of years. The foliage usually gets kind of beat up during the winter, but we've recently cut it off and all the new foliage coming out is really looking nice. It's real funky looking thing when it first comes out. It looks like a squid or something out of a Geiger sketchbook. Now a plant that I'd stopped growing for a long time was Achillia. They just tend to get ratty looking, a lot of them, and a lot of them have kind of washed out colors. This one is one called Sassy Summer Yellow. Awful name, but it's got great big flower heads. The stems stand up really nice ferny blue-green foliage, and it flowers over a long period. We've got flowers that are starting to fade, but we've still got a lot of buds which are just getting ready to open up. So kind of a neat little guy. Now, one of the hottest plants around right now is the new J.C. Ralston Arboretum Denny Werner introduction, Cercis Flamethrower Redbud. Comes out deep burgundy before going kind of corally color and then chartreuse, so you get this multicolor effect. It continues to flush all through the season, so you keep getting that combination of colors over a long period. That's my neighbor's puppy. You can hear him. Another great plant. This is Alstroemeria. This is one called Freedom. Now the old Alstroemeria that perhaps a lot of people grew, Alstroemeria citacina, was a vigorous, to put it mildly, plant, spread everywhere. These newer ones won't spread like that, but they will flower over a long period and take really bright sun. It's just a neat plant. There's some great yellow ones as well. Sweet Laura, others. And then it's in front, we've got a little Ruelia. Again, Ruelias sometimes have a reputation for running everywhere and getting out of control. But this is Ruelia elegans, a little clump forming one. And this form's called Ragin' Cajun. Got that really nice, clean, bright red color. A few more plants in this bed. This is kind of my hotbed with, brighter colors. This is a daylily that was bred in Virginia. It's called Hokey Spirit. Excuse me, VT Spirit. I always get that backwards. VT Spirit's got maroon and orange, like the Hokey's colors. It's actually kind of interesting. It's from a cross that the seeds could not get the seeds germinate, so actually had to do embryo rescue, where they go into the seed, take the embryo out, grow it in a tissue culture medium to get the plant. So the original plant is a test tube baby, and then it's produced by divisions after that. This is the first time I've gotten to see it flower, because the deer usually come and eat the flowers on it. Another species lily, not one that I collected, but one I'd love to see in the wild, is this Lilium Colossum. Lilium Colossum. It's got these kind of orange-red petals that turn back as a Turk's cap, bright orange pollen on there. Really pretty cool looking. It's a little dwarf one. It only grows about 3 feet tall. Flowers heavily, it bulks up heavily. This was one stem last year. I've got 4 stems this year, flowering well. I'm really hoping we're going to get some seed this year, because I'd like to be able to grow a lot of these out and distribute it. It's apparently widespread in China, although I've never seen it, but it is very difficult to find in commerce. So,
can you please tell people to ignore our dead grass, because we're getting a really good shot of it right now.
Okay, yeah, my wife, who is filming me, says please ignore the dead grass. It's being killed off for replacing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, look at another lily. Now this lily does not bulk up as quickly as that Lilium Colossum. This is Lilium Lengkongensie, another Asian Turk's cap lily with pink flowers, pink petals that are speckled with darker purple along the edges. It's a neat little one. Again, not one I collected, but from my friends at Far Reaches Farm. It's a neat little plant. Last year it didn't flower, but I only had 1 stem. This year, 1 stem again. I'm hoping next year I'll get maybe 2 stems. But, that's sometimes the way it goes with these things. So another lily that I collected in the wild, this is another one that we've yet to key out. It is more of a green on the outside than that purple from the other large one we showed, and kind of yellow-green in the center. We were told this one was yellow and the other one was white. I'd either call both of them white or neither one of them white, but it's a pretty plant. It's a little bit smaller, so we'll get this keyed out soon and figure out what we have. They were growing it quite a bit in gardens around there, so it was definitely cultivated. The plant I really love, Stokes Aster, Stokesia. This is an unnamed variety, but it's got really huge flowers compared to a lot of them. Stokes Aster is a native plant. It grows usually in bogs in the wild. At least that's where I've always seen it. But it's just as happy growing in, you know, average garden soil. Now, my wife has recently gotten into birds quite a bit while she's been staying at home. So I'm glad I've got a lot of these Syninges planted. Have several different ones. This one's called Carolyn. Syninges are related to African violets, but they're hardy for us out here. And the reason I like that I have these, and it's just starting to flower, is that hummingbirds love them. Hummingbirds, you can imagine with that long tubular flower, hummingbirds really flock to the Syninges. So hopefully we'll get a bunch out here so she can enjoy those. All right. So coming down alongside the house, there's a little more shade here, although always less shade than I think it is. We've got some orchids. This is a Blatilla. This is a hybrid Blatilla. So it's got Blatilla ochracea in it, but it flowers over a long period. It's going by the name Summer Moonshine, kind of a seed-raised selection. But Blatillas are great. I grow quite a few different ones. All are very, very good plants in the garden. This is another kind of interesting plant. Another one that's related to the Syninges. This is Hemaboya. Now, it's not looking like a whole lot right now. It doesn't flower until very late in the season. But these big, glossy, kind of leathery leaves, I think look really nice in the garden. When it flowers, it has great big tubular flowers, white or pink, and it's a plant that's kind of almost unknown in gardens for some reason, but it's a really good grower. It'll grow in very wet soils. In fact, this one we collected in the wild, and where it was growing wild, it was about 3 feet tall, but it was in a seat where it was constantly wet. From Tom Ranney, the mad scientist plant breeder at NC State, is this Hydrangea arborescens. So this is one of our native southeastern hydrangeas. This was one called Invincible Wee White. So it's a dwarf form of Hydrangea arborescens with great big flower heads. For people who are confused about how to prune hydrangeas, Hydrangea arborescens are fantastic because you can cut them back, they flower on new wood. So you don't have to worry about the timing of that. So this area is kind of where I grow a lot of things that are a little more tropical, need a little bit more protection, perhaps one that I'm trialing in the garden. So I have some palms here, a lot of begonias. This is a wild collected begonia that I collected on Imeshan, Begonia pedatophyta, and it is a super vigorous plant. It's just been in the ground for a couple of years and going to town. Real pretty one, Begonia Chandler's hardy with spotted foliage and reddish backs. Most of these I'm growing more for foliage than anything else. I have one Paulownia in the middle here, and I cut it back every year, but each year I let one stem grow up, and it grows to about 20 feet tall and great big leaves. And then in wintertime, I cut it all the way back down again and let it restart. It's kind of a neat way to grow plants.
That was to show you that it reaches that window. It's not there yet, but it always makes it up to, that's our son's bedroom window.
Exactly. You can see there's several more begonias in here. We've got Cotes de Question and Pewterware. A plant that I'm really excited about is this Fatsia polycarpa. This is a seedling off of a giant form that I saw in Cornwall. They were calling it Megafatsia. It's the Taiwan form, and I don't know how hardy it's going to be. It survived this winter, but it was a very mild winter. But the original plant had leaves that were almost 30 inches across. It was huge. So I'm really hoping it will do well. Another group that I really like are Scheffleras. Have not had a lot of luck with Scheffleras making it through both summer and winter for us. They either don't like our summers or they don't like our winters. This is one that's gone through summer and winter. Schefflera Gracilis. See the new growth comes out real covered in these silvery white hairs. Other plants I think are kind of interesting back here. This is a Cuba Omenci. This is one I collected on Imeshan. The old form we used to grow from Roy Lancaster wasn't nearly as hardy as this one, so this one hasn't had problems with winters where the old form we used to grow always seemed to do it. But again, this is protected, and I'm growing tucked into the back there. I have Livistona palms and Agathis, which is a southern hemisphere conifer that probably wouldn't survive out in the open garden. Oh,
You don't have to show it. I just
Yes.
like it.
my wife's favorite plant, and really one of my favorite plants, is this lily of the valley, Convolaria. This is one called Potsdam Stripe. Much, much better than the old striata form. It keeps that color much better through the season. When it comes out in the spring, it is just amazing, amazing. It's a really good spreader. It grows well. I really like that plant. I mentioned Latillas. This is one called Ogon, so it has chartreusey gold foliage, but then the flowers are the magenta that you typically think of with Latillas. So it's kind of a garish thing when it's in flower, which I like. And it's overtopping this horse chestnut. This is a Aesculus Turbinata, a seedling from a plant we used to have at the Arboretum that must have had really mixed up genes, because every time we sowed seeds, we'd get variegated ones, we'd get these little contorted, congested ones. That plant is about 10 years old now. So, and that's as big as it's gotten in 10 years. So probably never going to make it to the garden center. I do like Acubas. I mentioned the Cuba Omenci, but this is another one of my favorites. This is a Cuba Oba Nakafu with these really broad central gold sector. And another, I'll show one more. This is Daisuke's Tiger. And this one, it starts off when it's young, it's just not very, a little bit speckled, but as it gets older and older, it gets more and more speckled until it gets almost solid yellow. And, you know, probably plenty of people know this, but it's hard to walk by it when it's in flower. This is Acanthus Summer Candles. It bites though. Those flowers have little stiff little spines there around them. A lot of the Acanthus mostly grow in kind of Mediterranean type areas. You see them in Italy, Rome, Crete, and the foliage is, you know, you see that on urns and pillars and things in a lot of that type of Mediterranean architecture. So they're probably spiny so the goats don't eat them, but I mean, it's hard to beat a display like this. It really is spectacular, spectacular plant. It lasts for a long, long season. They will tend to spread a little bit, you know, over time. All right, a couple little plants here. This gardenia is one called Ogon no Hana, sold as golden to bloom. It's got a really nice doubled white flower, you know what you think of as a gardenia, but then it has this gold foliage. I cut mine back hard because I don't want it getting big in this spot, so it's just now flushing out from that hard cutback. But I love it just for its foliage, even if it never flowered. And I love it because it shows up so well against my pig, Connie Mae, that was given to me out of somebody else's garden. That always makes me happy. So it's right at the front of my house to greet everybody as they come in, and really shows off against that chartreuse foliage. Another great little plant in here is this bellflower, Campanula iridescent bells. It's got these almost silvery blue bellflowers hang down. Some of its parents, the Campanula punctata and tachysemana, will really run all over the place, but this iridescent bells doesn't run at all. It's a nice clumper, but a real pretty little plant. Get a few plants down here. This is, believe it or not, most of us know a juga or bugleweed as a little ground cover that's got often purple foliage and purple flowers. This is a different species, a juga incisa, and this is a selection Bikun, B-I-K-U-N. It has really showy blue flowers that top that variegated foliage. So it's a real showstopper in the early spring when it first emerges. We'll go down and look at a few plants in the woodland. We're just starting to get planted down here, so forgive it if it's a mess. But there's some neat things down here. This little thing is one that I was really excited to get. It's a sour matum, which is one of the Cobra Lilies, sour matum horsefeldii, one with a real narrow leaf called Lancelot, from Alan Galloway, who just recently passed away, who was a real genius when it came to aeroids. It's a neat plant. It'll slowly bulk up. You get this really nice texture that I think is going to look great here with some of these Platilla orchids and Parthenium. So a group of plants that I really like, and I have quite a few of in the garden, are Ardesia. Ardesia japonica is a little woody, it's got woody stems, it's a ground cover, it'll spread and it'll grow in real dense shade. It's got little pink flowers, not very showy. It gets bright red fruit, but the fruit is under the foliage. That's one that's called Hakuakan, that's pretty readily available. And this is another one. This is Ito Fukurin, another one that's pretty widely available. Fukurin just means marginal variegation. We grow quite a few at the Arboretum. We grow maybe 30 or so different ones. I don't have nearly that many here, but I do like them all. Another thing I like are variegated camellias. I'll pull a piece off of this one. This is one called Jeff Hamilton. It's very, very variegated. It's got kind of a regular, really broad, creamy white margin. This is one Tayo, which has single red flowers and then that central little splash of yellow. And I like the variegated camellias because camellias have really dark leaf, and in a woodland in the shade they can sometimes get they can make everything seem darker and whatnot. So the variegated ones I think kind of brighten things up. Of course, the deer seem to like to eat them more than others as well. I put in here, sometimes people have trouble growing tongue ferns, Pyrosia lingua. This is one called Kekan. But if you grow them on a slope, that's how they grow in the wild. They grow on slopes, they grow on boulders, they grow places where they never sit with water. They seem to grow much better. So if you can plant them on a bit of a slope, they'll always perform a lot better for you.
It's hard to tell they're on a slope since, I don't know,
Yeah.
the camera lady's not very adept at this.
Camera lady's doing fantastic. All right. I like a lot of the species hydrangeas, and that's probably because I wind up collecting a lot of them. But ones like Hydrangea strigosa, which will get very big, really big flower clusters, I think are fantastic plants, but they're hard to fit into a small garden, so having a bigger woodland for them makes things a lot easier. I said I like vines everywhere. You know, these are some newly planted ones. I've just been starting to get into this area. This is a Cadsura. Cadsura japonica is a variegated form. It's an evergreen vine, so it'll eventually climb up these trees and, you know, really make a show. Cadsura is, there are male and female ones, and when they fruit, they have really bright red fruits, but often you don't get them to fruit because they really need to cross. So I planted over here close by Cadsura, a different species. This is Cadsura longipedunculata, which gets that name because the flowers are held on long stems. So really beautiful when it's growing above you and you can see all those flowers hanging down. They're very, very primitive plants related to magnolias. So this is a little guy that I just put in. I was very excited to get them. This is a plant that I have tried to get for 25 years. This is Camellia granthemiana. Camellia granthemiana is a very, very endangered camellia. At one point, it was supposedly down to a single plant. Before I worked at J.C. Ralston Arboretum, I was at the Norfolk Botanic Garden, and the original person at Norfolk Botanic Garden, Fred Hewitt, was instrumental in helping protect this and bring it into cultivation. And so for the decade I was there, I tried to get my hands on this plant and never could. So I'm glad to finally have it. I didn't think it would be hardy at all, but the person I got it from said that it's been hardy for them outside in a slightly warmer area than we are, so I'm hoping it will survive. So we'll finish up with just a couple of plants.
You're at 33 minutes.
So I am fascinated by these evergreen maples and confused by them. It's very hard to tell them apart. This is one that I collected in 2017, Acer Fabry, I think. I've got about 4 or 5 different evergreen maples through the garden here. Most of them seem to do very, very well for us. So I'm hoping this will as well. And I'd really like to get a bunch growing and see them side by side and see them flower and see them fruit and really try and learn them and figure them out, because everywhere I've gone, every collection I've gone to where they have some of these, I look at them and I just get more confused because I think people just throw whatever name they want to on there. Fabry, Levigatum, Oblongum, a lot of different names used, but I'm not sure what's actually correct. And we'll finish up right here.
Can you add just a few flowers in up top at your mother's
Yes,
request?
I can add some few flowers in.
Thank you.
This is one of my pride and joys. This is Daphne Mountain Dove, one of the most popular plants at the Arboretum. Really showy evergreen shrub. Very, very difficult to propagate. It's hard to graft. It doesn't root almost at all. So really excited that I was able to get one. And usually, as you've seen, I usually kind of plant in drifts of one, but I do have, you know, a nice, what will be a nice ring of Asterum around this to really show off this plant. We'll have this glossy green Asterum nobilissimum foliage under this variegated plant. Should be very nice. This is the plant I mentioned, the Fatsia polycarpum, the Megafatsia. This is a slightly older plant. So still hasn't, leaves haven't reached what they were when I saw it in Cornwall, but I'm hoping we'll get really huge leaves and that it'll be hardy. Now you can tell the slope, right?
Yeah, for sure. People are definitely going to get seasick coming up the hill with me. Sorry.
Maybe I'll ask Chris to cut that out.
Okay.
Want to see more flowers? Okay. Here's one of my favorite flowers. Spigelia marylandica, Indian pink. This is a native plant. People are always surprised when they learn that this grows wild in North Carolina. It used to be pretty difficult to grow in the nursery, but they seem to have figured it out. But these red tubes with the yellow petals, really super showy. Butterflies really like them. This was, I liked so much that's one that went on the cover of my book because it's one of my favorites. All right, a few more flowers. I really like Abutilons. They're just so funky, and I learned them as houseplants, so I'm still always amazed that they grow outside.